Welcome to another TCGU video brought to you by the Chariot Group. My name is Bob Jackman, and in this video we are going to continue our training on the Smart Notebook software. This video is section 1.3, which will discuss mostly about the toolbar and the display settings. So the toolbar we talked about before is the toolbar across the top of the Smart Notebook software. You'll see it right across the top right here. And we're going to go into some of the tools on that toolbar in this section. The first thing I want to tell you is you can customize that toolbar. So if there's certain tools on there you don't want, or if there's certain tools you want to add to that, you can totally do that. And we're going to show you how to do that. The settings wheel looks like this, looks like a giant settings wheel or a cog. You'll find that on the far right of the toolbar on the top, and we'll click on that. What that will do is that will bring up the customized toolbar window. And the toolbar is set up into three sections. We've got the action sections on the left, and that'll coordinate with the action section on the toolbar here. The middle section is the add-ons, and so there's different things that we can add in on there. And then the last section is the tools, and so we can drag anything up there we want. I tend to not mess with the tools. They're all pretty much available anyway. The add-ons, maybe the distribute horizontally or vertically, maybe there. But most of the time what I'm changing is the action section. So all I have to do if I want to add something on there, let's say I want to add the Smart Document Camera. So I click and drag the Smart Document Camera up, and then wherever I go to put it, notice how these little squares pop up. If it's a square, it will add that into that spot. If I'm trying to put that over an existing square, let's do one that's not already up there. If I put that, drag it over an existing square, it will put it in its place and push the rest over to the right. If I want to take something off, I can just drag it off and it will take that off. If I want to take one of these, and if I drag it till it's tall and thin, then that will put it in as a large link, and so that makes it a little bit larger on the toolbar and easier to access. Also, if I go through and play and change a bunch of things, I can drag things off and suddenly they're gone. I can have a really small one. If I mess that up pretty bad and I want to just go back to the default toolbar, in the customized toolbar on the bottom left, it says Restore Default Toolbar. I can just click on that, and that will then restore that to the original default toolbar. When I'm all done, I can just hit Done, and that will take me back out of that as well. So that's how I customize the toolbar. We'll get in later about other customizations that you can do, but that's putting on there what you need. So when we get into navigating through through our pages, the first section of the toolbar on the left has our navigation buttons. So we've got a blue button to the right to go next page, a blue button to the left to go to the previous page, which do exactly that, go to the previous page and the next page. The next one is, it looks like a paper with a green plus sign. That's going to add a new blank page. And then the paper with the red X is going to delete the current page. So if I click on Add a Page, that'll add a nice blank page in. I can come in and write it. It adds that page after the previous page on which I clicked it. So you'll notice there's the page I was. It adds it afterwards. And then if I hit the Delete Page button, that deletes that page completely out, whatever page I'm currently looking at. Those four buttons, let me go back. Those four buttons as well are also located on the bottom of the side tab. So that could be on either side again, depending on which side I have that on, but they're on the bottom, which is kind of nice. If I like to stand on this side of my smartboard, partly because I'm right-handed, and so I can put those here, or if I walk to the other side of the smartboard, then I have those available over there. So that's something that's kind of nice about those navigation buttons. The next ones are some of the edit actions, and so the first thing we have is undo and redo, and you'll find those right here next to the above the Add New Page and Delete page. And that's kind of nice because if I come in here and do something and I just want to undo that last action, I can just hit undo. And if I want to redo that action, I can hit redo. I also have paste from clipboard, so if I were to click on something and hit drop down and go to copy, I could use that icon then to paste, and I could be copying from another program. It doesn't necessarily need to be in Smart Notebook, so I can go in and copy an image and come in and paste it. I tend to not use that one. That one's really only useful if I'm pasting up at the smartboard. Usually when I'm copying and pasting, it's when I'm sitting at my desk creating my lesson. So I tend to not use that a whole lot while I'm actually doing a lesson. Other ways that you can paste as well is Control V or Command V on a Mac will paste. That's your typical keyboard shortcut. I can also click and hold for 3 seconds or right click on the board and I've got paste in the option there, or I can hit Edit and paste is in the drop-down box there. So a lot of 4 different ways that I can paste. Also, I can delete an object. Now, if you go up, the red X right now is grayed out because I have nothing selected. But if I come in here and select that, then I can hit delete, and it will delete that object. If I want to get that back again, I can go to undo. Undo is a really important button a lot of teachers miss. It's really helpful when you are in the middle of a class, something weird happens, maybe your sleeve gets too close to the board and causes something weird to happen, just hit undo. It's the fastest way to get out of it. I've seen teachers spend a couple of minutes trying to fix something that happened on the smartboard unexpectedly when all they had to do was just hit undo 1 or 2 times. So don't forget about that undo. The next is the save and open. Those are just to the right of the buttons we were just talking about. So save looks like a 3.5-inch floppy disk, for those of you who remember that. When I click that, it's going to save over what I currently have. So if I've moved anything or changed anything, it's going to save all of those changes. I use save most often when I'm creating lessons. I tend to not save so much when I'm teaching a lesson. Then if I'm doing that, I tend to do a save as, because I want to keep my original intact and not change that with all the new markups that I have. So a lot of times I will do file save as rather than just saving it if I'm in the middle of a lesson. Also, I can do Control S or Command S on a Mac to save, and that's typically how I'll do it while I'm creating my lesson, because I've got my keyboard in front of me, and so I tend to not use the save icon on the toolbar very often. The open button does the same thing. It allows you to open up another file. On Windows, when I hit the open icon, it will pull up the open dialog box, and I can browse for the notebook file that I want to open. However, when I do it on Windows, it will open the new file in place of the existing file. So at the same time, it's going to close whatever file I currently have open and open the new one in its place. If you want to have more than one file open at a time, you can do that. Typically what I'll do is just minimize the window that I have open up my Explorer window, find the file, double click on it, and we'll open it up in a new window. So then I can put 2 files side by side if I want to do that. On a Mac, if I do hit the open button, it will open up in a new window, and so I can have them open side by side. Again, I tend to not use that button on the toolbar very often, so that tends to be one that I take off. All of my files, when I save them, will look like this. And what that is, that's just what the icon will look like, and they are a .notebook file. So as I create my files and save them, they will be saved as a .notebook file, which is how they will be. So that's how they'll save. The next section we're going to talk about are display settings a little bit. So if I come up here, there's an icon that looks, it's called View Screens. It looks like just like this, a monitor with a magnifying glass. When I click on that, I get a bunch of options, and we're going to go through those options and take a look at the different options that are there. It's got our zoom settings and our different view settings. So the first one at the top is full screen. So when I click on that, I can go full screen. That's going to take me into full screen. So the nice part about that, you can consider it like a presentation mode, but it's not like PowerPoint where you have to be in presentation mode for things to work. Everything works equally as well inside full screen as well as not in full screen. However, it does increase the visibility. Everything becomes a little bit larger, so a little bit easier to see. Also, it gets rid of your toolbar and your taskbar and your sidebar and everything like that that's just a distraction. So it helps to keep the students focused on the content, because we're getting rid of all those other distracting things and making it a lot easier to focus in on the important part, which is the content of your actual lesson. To get out of, another thing while I'm in full screen is I have this floating toolbar that I can use, and I can drag that anywhere I'd like. It's got on it navigation buttons. The 3 dots right here, it'll look a little bit different on a Mac, but it'll be in the same place. It'll look like a menu window. When I click on that, I get a menu option of all of my tools. And so there's all the tools there are easily accessible. This middle section is for Smart Response, so I've got to insert a question and different things like that if you have Smart Response installed. This next icon I'll get to in a minute, which just changes the view settings. And then this icon, of course, will get me out of full screen. The 2 arrows on the end will make that a little bit larger. And what that gives me is insert blank page, as well as undo button, which is really nice, and then the magic pen, which we'll get into a little bit later. So it's kind of nice while you're in full screen, you've got access to that undo button, as well as insert new page. While you're in a notebook file, if you're on the last page and it's not blank, if you hit next, it'll automatically create a new blank page for you. So you don't have to create a new blank page unless you want to insert one. And then to get out of full screen, I just hit that icon, and that gets me out of full screen. So when I'm teaching a lesson in class, I tend to be in full screen as much as possible, keep everybody focused on the content. I can't model that as well for you because we're going to be actually going through a lot of the buttons to create lessons. But while I'm actually teaching a lesson in front of students, I would be in full screen almost the entire time. Another thing you have while you're in full screen that may be helpful, if you're on older versions of notebook software, you may have the floating tools. And those will appear probably on your left side there. And they have a settings wheel down here at the bottom. That settings wheel may also appear just to the right. When I click on a pen, it will appear, it will kind of pop out a little bit, and that will allow me to change the settings for that particular pen. So I can add in different pens and different things like that. Again, we still have that drop-down menu that I showed you before. That's just another way you can have access to a few tools. If I'm on the newer versions, I've got Smart Ink. So when I pick up my pen, the Smart Ink icon will appear. When I click on that, I can customize those pens and have a lot of those pens preset, especially if I'm looking for a particular color. This makes it really easy to come in and say, all right, I want a purple pen, and then I can start writing with my purple pen. So that allows a little bit of customization, a little bit of variety there without having to get out of full screen. The next thing we have on there after the full screen is there is a transparent background, we'll get to that later, is the dual page display. And what that does is exactly like it sounds. It allows you to see two pages at the same time, side by side. So when I click on that, there's my two pages. As I navigate through the pages, you'll notice that the pages kind of shift over. And so we see, the two pages in a row. The other thing that I can do while I'm doing this is I can pin a page down. And so the way to do that is I do need the pin page. The easiest way to do that is add that to my toolbar. So I customize my toolbar, come down here to the P pin page, and I'm going to drag that up and put that on my toolbar. Hit done, just like we did before. And when I pin the page, it will take that page and pin it down. So now as I navigate through the pages, you'll notice that that page stays there while the other page changes. And so it makes it a little bit easier to keep one page up while I look at the other page. An example of that would be to have maybe a vocabulary list or a reference sheet or a scaffolding sheet in place while we're going through a lesson, and then later we could do that lesson again without that page there. A couple of drawbacks to that, so let me unpin that page and we'll show you an example here. Here I've got an example where I've got a story problem here on the right. Maybe we've got multiple story problems. Here I've got a multiplication table as a reference, as a scaffold on the left. And I'm going to pin that page there and look at multiple lessons. Notice how small it is. It becomes 1/4 the size. So everything that I create, I may want to create a little bit larger, just if I know I'm going to use that in dual page. I can go into full screen, so I can click View Screens, go into full screen. That will make everything a little bit larger, but again, still it's pretty small. So adjust your text size appropriately, image size. But it allows me to come in here and say, all right, Sam is picking, he's got 4 baskets with 8 apples each. I mean, I've got full interactivity here, so I can go through and drag my apples over here. And I could go through there, but then I can come over here to my reference, 4, 8, 32. So I can go through and utilize it that way. I can drag and drop items from one page to another, so I can move things back and forth. Again, this can be useful at times, but it is not something that I find extremely useful that I'm using on a regular basis. A lot of times I see teachers creating stuff that's, oh, I'm going to do this in dual page, and it could be easily done on one page. So really think through whether or not you need dual page or not. So I'm going to get out of full screen. If I want to go back to looking at one page, I just click on the View Screens, and where it said dual page before, it's going to now say single page, and then I'm back to looking at one page. So that's dual page. Next we're going to look at the zoom, and what that does is that basically how far zoomed in we are on that page. And if I click on the view screens, you'll see I've got 50%, 75%, 100%, so I can click through those and it's going to zoom in or out. If I'm on a board that has multi-touch, I could zoom in with 2 fingers on the page itself as long as I'm not clicking on an object. So I've got those available, but the two ones that are the most common is the view entire page and the view page width. And by default, it's going to be on page width. And what that does is it basically, whatever width is available for the page, it puts the page to that width and then scales it appropriately. So it fills the screen really quite well. That is really nice and works very well. However, there are a few problems with that. One is if you don't have a widescreen smartboard, but you do have a widescreen laptop, that can be problematic, because when I'm coming in here looking at this, and I've got a full page, so if I had a non-widescreen smartboard, my page would continue all the way down to here. And so I wouldn't be able to see my whole page at once because the width is so wide, and when I'm on my smartboard, it's not that wide. So if I come in here, click on View Screens and go to Entire Page, now it's going to scale it so I can see the whole page at once. That's the biggest thing I recommend you do if you've got a widescreen, sorry, a widescreen computer and you don't have a widescreen smartboard, to set that on your laptop as you create lessons and as you look at your lessons, so that you can make sure that everything is visible and how it would be on the smartboard when you go to view it, because that way when I put that on my smartboard full screen, that's what's going to be visible, and it becomes very easy to see that. Now I am on a widescreen smartboard, so the nice part is I can go to page width, and that's going to fit pretty well. Now when I go to full screen, so I click on this and go to full screen, okay, that works out really well, but if I've taken a lesson that somebody else created for a non-widescreen smartboard, then I'm going to have to scroll up and down to see that content. So on my floating toolbar here, I've got this icon, the View Entire Page button, and I can toggle back and forth between. So as I go through a lesson, if I've got a page that was meant for full screen or a page that was meant for widescreen, I can easily go back and forth between those two view settings, even while I'm in full screen mode. Next thing we're going to talk about is printing. So I can print my pages from Smart Notebook. One thing to remember when you print though is you're just printing it, you're not going to have any interactivity. So I can print those notebooks files. We can do them like thumbnails. Your printing options can be very similar to, like, say, PowerPoint. So I've got thumbnails where it takes each page and shrinks it down into a thumbnail. Handouts where I've got the pictures of the thumbnails with a little bit of space on the right for students to write notes. The one I use most often is full page, and that's where it's going to take each page in my notebook file and make it a full page. Also, they got questions, results. That's more for Smart Response. So if you're using Smart Response, you can print your questions and your results. When I go to do that, let me just show that to you. The print icon, you can add that to your toolbar. So I did have a period of time where I was printing a lot. I have students come up and collaboratively draw and create some stuff on the smartboard, and then I would print it out and post it in my classroom. So at that time, I added that print icon to my toolbar. And then shortly when we were done with that activity for that week, I took it off. So, but I can easily get there by going File and then Print, or hitting Control P. And up here on the left, I can choose what style I want. Do I want thumbnails or handouts or full page? Again, I usually do full page depending on what I'm trying to accomplish. Then I come in here and change the header, the footer, the date, showing page numbers or not. The one thing I do like to do when I do full page though is I'll click on Printer Setup, and I will click this button right here that says Landscape. Oops, I hit it twice. And that will make it landscape. That tends to get you a larger printed image. So if we were coming in and sketching up some ideas and I wanted to print that out, that would be how I would do that. So that's kind of how that works. If I am on a Mac, I would go to Page Setup to change that landscape mode. Next thing we'll look at is exporting our smartboard files. So there's a number of ways we can export that. You can export it as a web page, which gives you all the HTML files and everything to have that be a web page that can stay on your computer, or you could put it on the web. I don't see a lot of people really doing that a whole lot. You can export them all as image files, and that's just an image of each page of your notebook file. The one that's most common though is PDF. Which is the same as the print option. So it looks exactly the same as the print options. Instead of sending it to a printer, it's just going to save it as a PDF. That's the one I use most frequently. I'll save it as a PDF, and then if I really want to print it, I'll print it from the PDF, but then I've got a PDF that I can make available for students or teachers that I can email or put on a website or on a like a Edmodo page or something like that. The CFF is a common file format for interactive whiteboards, so if I wanted to take content and send it to somebody who is using Active Inspire software or Mimeo software, that would be one way to do that. I don't see a lot of people doing that. Not all elements are going to necessarily cross over if they're specialty, but as far as general content, that works pretty well. I can export everything to a PowerPoint, and what that is going to do is it basically will take the content and put it in a PowerPoint. There's no transitions, the interactivity is gone, all of that type of stuff, so I don't do that a lot. If I want a PowerPoint, I'll create in PowerPoint. If I want to do it in this, I'll do it in this. But if I've created something and I just wanted the content itself, the pictures and the text, put it in a PowerPoint, that is something I could do. And then the last one is optimized notebook file. And so what that does, if I have any large images, it will compress those images so they take up less space. So it's just going to give you an optimized file that is ideally taking up less space. So those are your export options. So that's pretty much it. You should be able to do all of these things now at this point. You can customize your toolbar, navigate, add, and delete pages, undo, redo, paste, and delete objects. You can save and open notebook files, go into full screen, dual page, change your zoom from page width to entire page, which is really helpful as you're creating lessons. Print my notebook file as a handout or a full page, and then export as a PDF or image files. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Look for the next section 1.4 as we continue this series of notebook training, and feel free to share this with as many people as you like. Thanks.